Hello, everyone. So this week we were looking at basically how to write our research papers. And for our first prompt, we're supposed to talk about something that we learned, something maybe we had heard about before but found useful revisiting again. And that for me was in the PowerPoint on writing a literature review, there was a slide with a diagram about finding good sources. And just looking at that, it was a good reminder that not every news site is something that's reliable or unbiased, and it's important to keep in mind that sticking to the same sources, especially if they're biased, is not always good. Just like looking at the visual to see where different sources fall in terms of quality and bias was nice to see. So it's just important to make sure that you're paying attention and using sources that have minimal partisan bias, and that would be sources like NPR, BBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times, PBS, The Wall Street Journal, sources like that. And I also found the different steps to writing a research paper helpful. So like just going through like choosing a topic, finding information, just seeing those steps laid out, I think is helpful in terms of taking steps forward and finding a starting point with writing a paper. For the second question of where I am personally struggling with writing my paper, it goes back to finding sources, I think, for me, because the topic that I'm writing about is Hurricane Maria and how it had like displaced members of the Puerto Rican community, and how that led to like migration to the United States. But since it's such a recent event, there's not a lot of like peer-reviewed studies and journal articles about that event. So for me, I guess it's just finding sources that are reliable. And the one slide in the presentation that said that sources that you find online, like with a .edu or .gov or .org, are often more reliable than some other things you might find online. A personal question I have would be, how many of those sources am I allowed to use in the paper, and how many journal articles do I need? My tip for the class for setting yourself up to get a good grade on a paper would be to write an outline before you start writing the paper. Even if it's just like a simple outline with like the introduction and then the key points that you want to hit in the body section of the paper and then the conclusion. I just find that really helpful with making sure that I cover everything that I want to cover in the paper, because as you're writing, sometimes you might get distracted, and just having that outline ahead of time can be really helpful. So that's my recommendation for you guys. All right, have a good week, everyone. Thanks for listening.